Good morning. I am Maddie, if you don't know me, and I'm super excited that you're here. Now we get to practice yoga together this morning. And this is Ryan. He's my husband, and he is going to be modeling the poses for us. Well, I guess logistics. We're not playing the music this week because we accidentally got copyrighted last week. So Ryan's gonna play some piano music between now and next Saturday, and we'll have some better music ready next week. But sorry about not having music for today. Yeah, so go ahead and set up your mat if you don't have it set up yet, or just make a space where you can practice this morning. So the theme for today's practice is going to be based on Luke chapter 15 and the story of the prodigal son. We're going to be thinking about what it means to be a son or a daughter of the Lord. And as we do that, we're going to look at ways that we might not be living like that right now, either to our knowledge or maybe even subconsciously. And so we're going to use a lot of language of an orphan mindset or a son and daughter mindset. A lot of that comes from a book called The Gospel-Centered Life. So if you've read that book, this might sound familiar. There's also a book called Abba's Child by Brendan Manning that I'm going to read you a couple of quotes from because I think he paints a really beautiful picture of what it does mean to be a child of God. And yeah, it's just helpful language. And so that is going to be our mindset as we work through this pose today. And so I'd invite you to just center yourself, start being more conscious of your breath and your posture as you sit. I'm just going to start us by reading the story of the prodigal son from Luke 15 and praying, and then we will get started with the moving part of our practice. So this is Luke chapter 15, starting in verse 11. Then Jesus said, "There was a man who had 2 sons. The younger of them said to his father, 'Father, give me the share of the property that will belong to me.' So he divided his property between them. A few days later, the younger son gathered all he had and traveled to a distant country, and there he squandered his property in dissolute living. When he had spent everything, a severe famine took place throughout that country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to one of the citizens of that country, who sent him to his fields to feed the pigs. He would gladly have filled himself with the pods that the pigs were eating, and no one gave him anything. But when he came to himself, he said, 'How many of my father's hired hands have bread enough and to spare, but here I am dying of hunger. I will get up and go to my father, and I will say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me like one of your hired hands.' So he set off and went to his father. But while he was still far off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion. He ran and put his arms around him and kissed him. Then the son said to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son.' But the father said to his slaves, 'Quickly, bring out a robe, the best one, and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. And get the fatted calf and kill it, and let us eat and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found.' And they began to celebrate. Now his elder son was in the field, and when he came and approached the house, he heard music and dancing. He called one of the slaves and asked what was going on. He replied, 'Your brother has come, and your father has killed the fatted calf, because he has got him back safe and sound.' Then he became angry and refused to go in. His father came out and began to plead with him. But he answered his father, 'Listen, for all these years I have been working like a slave for you, and I have never disobeyed your command. But you have never even given me a young goat so that I might celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours came back, who has devoured your property with prostitutes, you killed the fatted calf for him?' Then the father said to him, 'Son, you are always with me, and all that is mine is yours. But we had to celebrate and rejoice, because this brother of yours was dead and has come to life. He was lost and has been found.'" Father, I pray that you would send your spirit here to be with us in all of these different physical places that we're in right now, that you would meet us on our mats. Would you give us eyes to our hearts to see the ways that we have been living as orphans and not stepping into the life and the freedom and the love that you have for us? Father, we love you and are grateful for you. We pray all of this in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, so we're going to start our practice standing this week. So go ahead, if you're ready to stand, we're going to do something that is called, that's called breath of joy to get us started. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take a breath, but we're going to take it in 3 parts. So we're going to take a deep inhale in. On the first third of your inhale, you'll bring your arms out in front of you. On the second part of your inhale, out to the side. And then to get the fullness of your inhale, raise your arms up overhead. That should be one whole inhale. And then we exhale and just bring our arms down to our side. Good. So we're going to keep doing that a couple of times just on your own inhale. Good. Just begin to let your breath fill all of these parts of your middle body, even your limbs. Just for your breath to start to move in you. Maybe even if you're not smiling. So take a couple more deep breaths with that. So good. After your next exhale, you're going to bring your hands to clasp behind your back. Good. And then you're going to start to straighten your arms and tuck your shoulders underneath yourself so that you feel a big heart-opening stretch. You might start to feel a stretch in your arms, maybe in your neck. And take one deep breath into that stretch. Good. Unclasp your hands, bring them down to your mat right in front of your feet, and then meet in a forward fold there. Good. Take 2 more deep breaths here in a forward fold. Begin if you need to shake your knees or stand on your heels or your toes just to loosen up your legs. And then from forward fold, if your hands aren't on the mat, drop them down to the mat and step your feet back so that you're in a plank pose. And we're going to take 3 rounds of this next little flow that we're going to do, but from plank, you're going to begin to lower by bending your elbows. So your elbows should stay straight over your wrists, good, and then lower all the way down. And then flip your feet so that your toes, the tops of your toes are flat against the mat, and you're going to push up and arch your back so that you're in upward facing dog. Good, and then push back to child's pose. So send your hips back to your heels, arms stretched out in front of you. We're going to do that twice more. So from child's pose, come into a plank pose. So your hips come forward, tuck your toes, good. And then lower in chaturanga. That's what Ryan's doing right now, good. And then flip your toes and push up for upward facing dog. Stay here for 1 breath and feel a stretch in your chest. Good, and then push back for child's pose. One more time, come up into a plank. Good, begin to make your way down into chaturanga. Flip your toes, push into upward facing dog. Take 1 breath here, and then push back into child's pose. So we're just going to use this beginning part of our practice to come into our bodies, take a temperature reading for how you're feeling, where your heart is at, where your head is at, where your body's at. Just begin to think about those things as we take a breath here. Okay, and then you're going to come up to sit. So swing your legs out in front of you. Good. And sit in a cross-legged position. So it doesn't matter which leg is on top or on the outside, but come to sit cross-legged. Maybe turn my so it's easier to see. Good. So you're going to start by bringing your left ear to meet your left shoulder. And bring your right arm behind you and reach back for your left hip. So you should feel a really good stretch in this right side of your neck here. You don't have to be static here. You can drop your head forward or send it behind you, just whatever feels good as you stretch your neck here. Good, and then you can bring your right arm back to the right side and just drop your head down into your neck. And again, you can move your head from side to side or shake your head yes and no. You're just stretching this back part of your neck. Good, and then your right ear will come to your right shoulder. Your left arm reaches for your right hip. Take a couple of breaths here. Good, and then your left arm can come back to your left side and just drop your head back. Be careful not to do it too quickly or to hurt your neck, but carefully just begin to lower your head back and feel a stretch in this front part of your neck. Good. Come back to a neutral neck. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to take what's called eagle arms. And so we're going to do this to continue to stretch this part of our shoulders and our chest here. And so you're going to start with your arms out in front of you and then wrap your right arm under your left one. And then if you can, see if you can make your palms touch. Good. And then you're going to send your elbows up so that they're almost at the same level as your shoulders if you can, while at the same time dropping your shoulders away from your ears. You should feel a good stretch in your upper arms here. Remember to breathe. Good. And we're just going to switch sides. So your left arm now will hook under your right arm. See if you can get your palms to touch. If you can't, that's okay. We're just twisting. Raise your elbows up and at the same time relax your shoulders so that they begin to sink down away from your ears. Good. You can drop your arms now to your sides. We're going to take a couple more poses while we're seated here, but first I want you to switch your legs so that your opposite foot is now on the outside of your crisscross. Just to get some balance in your legs here. I've noticed that I always sit the same way when I sit crisscross, and so when I do finally realize that and switch legs, it's like, oh, different and a little loose. So from there, you're going to take a twist on the right side. So your left hand comes and meets your right knee. Good. Remember, like last week, we inhale to grow tall, and on an exhale, you can twist over to your right side there. Yep, maybe your left arm meets the floor behind you. Good. Come back to center and take that on the left side. So inhale to grow tall, exhale to twist. Good. Come back to center. We're just going to take a forward bend here. So on an inhale, once again, grow tall. Maybe even bring your arms up overhead. And on an exhale, you're just going to bend out your hips all the way down into this seated forward fold. See if your hands can meet the mat or the floor. Take one more breath here. Come back up to sit. And move so that you're in a tabletop position, so that you're standing on your hands and your knees. Good, and we're just going to take a couple rounds of cat-cow here, so we continue to open up this middle part of our body and get some breath moving through here. So on an inhale, good, you're gonna arch your back, lift your chin up. On an exhale, round your spine, tuck your chin, send your hips even back a little bit for cat. On an inhale, come back into cow. And on an exhale, cat. Okay, do that a couple more times on your own breath. We're going to begin to move into some like standing poses here, or poses where we are supporting ourselves with our own weight, as opposed to right now we're on the floor. So like if you were to fall right now, the floor is right there, probably nothing would happen. So as we move into these like standing poses where we have to support ourselves a little more than is obvious in this kind of pose, we're going to start to think about um, some of the orphan-like traits that we might have. And we're going to do that not to make you feel bad about them or to shame you, or to like give you this list of things that you need to fix, but rather because it's hard to speak truth into something if we don't know that we're currently believing a lie about it. And so we have to identify the lies that we're believing before we can begin to speak truth over them and to see what scripture says about them. And so as we move into this next part of our practice and we begin to identify some orphan-like traits that we have, I encourage you to do it with a lot of grace for yourself, and holding on to the hope that after we spend some time identifying them, we're going to move into the invitation that we have to be fully sons and daughters. And so you can hold on to that hope as maybe you start to feel a little bit down or upset about orphan-like traits that you find in yourself. Okay, so that was a good amount of cat-cow. So come back to neutral spine. We're going to push ourselves up into downward facing dog. So tuck your toes, straighten your legs and your hips back. Good. See if you can reach your hips back even a little bit further. So good, right? Good. And then you're going to walk your feet to meet your hands at the front of your mat and hang in a forward fold. Good. From forward fold, you're going to inhale and lift your arms up overhead. And on an exhale, just drop your hands down to your side. We're going to stand here in mountain pose. And as you stand here in mountain pose, which probably feels pretty unassuming, but is one of the first standing poses that we've done in our practice, I'm going to read to you some of the traits that in the gospel-centered life that the authors identify in orphans. And so as I read some of these things to you, just begin to think about where you might resonate with them, things that might feel true about the way that you live or the way that you perceive yourself or God or other people. So remember to keep being cognizant of your breath and taking deep breaths, and I am going to read some of these traits of the orphan. So the orphan feels as if no one cares about him or her, needs to look good, feels guilty and condemned, struggles to trust things to God, has to fix her own problems, has trouble receiving help, lacks confidence, feels discouraged and defeated, tends to compare himself with others, feels powerless to defeat the flesh and sin, needs to be in control of situations and others. As you hear that list, just begin to think about what of those might be true for you. Remember to do that with a lot of grace for yourself. This isn't supposed to make you feel down or bad about yourself, but rather we have to name things to bring them to life sometimes. And so we have to name these lies so that we can speak truth over them. So also as you identify them, remember that they're lies. And we're going to move into what the truth is here in a little bit. Okay, from mountain pose here, we're going to step your left foot back so that you're in warrior one. So step your left foot back pretty far. Good. And then you're going to send your weight into the right side of your body and lean. Start bending your right knee. Good. So that your knee is over your ankle and your knee is almost making a 90-degree angle. You're going to send your arms up overhead and your gaze is going to follow your arms. So look up towards the sky. As we do these warrior poses here, even just the name warrior, I think it brings out some of the traits that orphans have too. This need, we feel like we have to like fight for ourselves or defend ourselves or protect ourselves. Those are things that are orphan mindsets. So as you stand here in our first warrior pose, think about how you might think you have to be a warrior for yourself. From warrior one, we're going to move to warrior two. And so your back foot, you're going to angle so that it's parallel to the back edge of your mat. Your weight is still shifting into your right leg, but now your hips are square towards the long edge of your mat, and your hands come out to the side. And now your gaze follows your right arm. So you're looking straight overhead. See if you can sink even a little bit deeper into your right leg here. And that might hurt a little bit or feel a little bad. In the same way that I think when we try to act as warriors for ourselves or protect ourselves or defend ourselves, we can't do it. We're not actually strong enough to take care of ourselves. And so it often feels a little bit painful or difficult. We're going to reverse your warrior, so flip your right palm up and send your arms back so that your left arm comes down your left leg, your right arm stretches up and over. Take one more breath here. And then come back into warrior two. So your arms are straight out in front of you and your gaze follows your right hand. Maybe remember to smile here too. As I think about this like section of our practice that we're in as we're identifying orphan-like traits in ourselves, there's a quote from Abba's Child, and it says, "Whatever is denied cannot be healed." And so I think about that as I think about feels kind of bad and at least not fun to sit here and to identify orphan traits in ourselves. But whatever is denied cannot be healed. So unless we identify it, there's no way that we can bring it to Jesus, that we would even know to bring it to Jesus and ask him to heal it. So another warrior two. From warrior two, we're going to move to warrior three. And so you're going to send more of your weight into your right leg and begin to slowly lift your left leg up off the mat and behind you, if you can. So you're bending at your hips. If you have like a table or a chair that you want to lean on, that's fine. I'm just going to take one more breath here. With control, bring your left foot back down to the mat. Good. And just send your arms down to meet your feet and hang in a forward fold. One of your legs probably feels a lot more stretched than the other one right now. So if you need to like wiggle your legs or tuck your toes, do whatever you need to in your forward fold. And then step your left leg back with your hands on the mat, Hands on the mat, left leg back, and then your right leg back. And then just drop your knees for child's pose. I stuck this little child's pose into our practice in between doing our right side and our left side, because I think about, as I've thought about times that I have tried to be a warrior for myself, in terms of like times that I've tried to protect myself or fight for myself, it's really tiring, because I actually don't have power to do it or to take care of myself. And so we have this little resting pose in the midst of reflecting on these orphan-like qualities, because it's difficult to be orphans, to not have a father who loves us, or to forget that we have a father who loves us and cares for us. Okay, we're going to take that flow on the other side. And so from child's pose, you're going to tuck your toes if they're not already tucked. Begin to straighten your legs and send your hips up and back for downward facing dog. Take one breath here, and then on your exhale, walk your feet up to meet your hands. And hang in this forward fold. And come back up to mountain pose. So arms on the inhale come up overhead, and on an exhale, just bring them down to your side. There's a quote from Brennan Manning in Abba's Child, and he says, "But we cannot assume that God feels about us the way we feel about ourselves, unless we love ourselves compassionately, intensely, and freely." I think part of the reason that we often find ourselves with orphan mindsets is because we constrain God and the way that He thinks about us to thinking about us the way that we think about ourselves. And it's just not true. The ways that we shame ourselves or get down on ourselves or feel upset or disappointed when we don't accomplish something or achieve what we set out to achieve or act the way we wanted to act, we get upset with ourselves. And I think we project that onto God in the way that He feels about us. But the truth is that God loves us compassionately, intensely, freely. He loves us in our sin. He loves us when we set out to do something one way and we completely mess it up. That is what it means to be a son and a daughter. The other side, so this time you're going to step your right foot back, bend your left leg so that your knee is over your ankle and you have a nice right ankle here. And then arms come up overhead and your gaze follows. Something that I think is almost ironic as we use these warrior poses to think about our orphan-like tendencies is that in Warrior One, we send our gaze to heaven. It's almost like this, I'm trying to do it myself, but my heart knows that I cannot do it. That I need my Father to protect me, to fight for me. Almost child again. That says the deepest is so there's a truth to even when we feel like we want to fight for ourselves because we feel like we have to, that our hearts, the innermost part of our being, that we were made to worship and be loved by God. From Warrior Two, we're going to reverse our warrior. So flip your front palm up and send your right hand down towards your right ankle. Your left arm is up and overhead. About the story in Luke to say his father wants to take him back as his son who he loves, and the younger son doesn't even imagine that that would be possible. From your reverse warrior, come back into Warrior Two, and then we're going to move into Warrior Three. And so slowly begin to bring your right leg up as you bend at your hips. Maybe your arms come out in front of you, or maybe you hold them at your heart. So good. Take one more breath here. And then bring your right leg to meet the mat. Good. Bring your hands down to touch the floor or almost touch the floor in forward fold. And then step your feet back. Plank, just so that you can lower down for child's pose. So drop your knees, send your hips back, child's pose. So good. Take one more breath here. And then you're going to come up out of child's pose and come to sit on your ankles. And as you do that, you're going to tuck your toes so that you're doing what Brian's doing. Good. We're going to sit in this pose for a minute or two. I think it looks really unassuming, like we look like we're just sitting. But really, you should probably feel a pretty intense stretch in your feet and in your toes here. Um, and I think about how that relates to our orphan mindsets. Also, if at any point you need to come out of this pose and just come to sit, that's totally fine. But as you are in this pose, think about how that relates to being an orphan in that when we're orphans, things that like should feel normal, they often don't. Or things that look easy are not easy because we feel like we have to do them by ourselves. We feel like we don't have a father who will provide for us or take care of those things for us. So sit in this pose here for 1 second while I see if I can go fix the Wi-Fi. Okay, come out of this pose and send yourself back into child's pose. Take a couple of breaths here. We're going to meditate now on what it means to be a son or a daughter. So as you've brought up those things or identified those traits that you have that tend to be more orphan-like, we're going to surrender those to our Father, and we're going to ask Him to remind us, not just today, but over and over and over again, what it means that we are His children. So from child's pose, you're going to come back up to sit and swing your legs out, and then send your legs out in front of you. Okay. On an inhale, you're going to grow tall. On an exhale, you're just going to reach down. See if you can get as close to your toes as you can. Oh, good job, right? Good. If this is comfortable for you, you can stay here. If it's more comfortable for you to just come up and sit with a straight back, not reaching forward, that is totally fine too. I'm going to read you now the characteristics of people who live as sons and daughters of the Lord. So, people who live as sons and daughters are not fearful of God. They feel forgiven and totally accepted. They trust daily in God's sovereign plan for their life. Prayer is a first resort. They're content in relationships because they know that they're accepted by God. They feel freedom from making a name for themselves. They're able to take risks and even to fail. They're encouraged by the Spirit working in them. They're able to laugh at themselves. They're aware of their inability to fix life, people, and problems. They're able to freely confess their faults to others. They don't always have to be right. They experience more and more victory over the flesh and sin. Even if you feel like you don't resonate with things on this list, or if you do, these are invitations. These are not things that you have to be all the time. And if you don't meet these standards, then you don't make it, or you're not a son or a daughter. These are all invitations daily from the Lord as He invites us over and over again into being His children. This is what that means. And so, as you hear those characteristics, don't hear them as things that you have to do, or don't feel shame if you don't feel like you resonate with them right now. Hear them as ways that God is beckoning you more and more into sonship and daughtership. Good. So from your forward fold, or if you're just sitting upright, you're going to go back to lay so that you're laying completely flat on your back. You're going to bend your right knee so that your foot is on the mat. Good. And then your left foot or your left ankle, you're going to cross over your right knee. Good. And maybe this already feels like a stretch to you in that outside part of your left leg. That's great. If you want a little more of a stretch, you can thread your arms through the little triangle that you're making. So your left hand is going to go through the hole that Ryan's left hand is in, but your right hand is going to go on the outside of your right leg and come to meet your left hand. That makes sense. Yeah, good. So you might pull yourself up a little bit to do that. But wherever feels like a stretch for you. And as you sit in this stretch, I want to read to you again the father's response. So remember, the son who's gone and wasted all of his father's money and is starving. He recites this this little speech that he's going to give to his father. He says, "I've sinned against heaven and before you, no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired hands." His orphan friend cannot even fathom being anything more than his father's hired hand. And his father, it says, while the son was still far off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion. He ran and put his arms around him and kissed him. Then the son said to the father, "Father, I've sinned against heaven and before you. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son." But the father, notice how he interrupts his speech. The son doesn't even get through the whole thing. The father interrupts him and he says to his slaves, "Quickly, bring out a robe, the best one, and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. And get the fatted calf and kill it, and let us eat and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found." Do you hear the excitement that the father has for his son? The love that he has for his son. Go ahead and switch legs. So bring your left leg to the mat, your right ankle crosses over. If you want to thread your arms through again, you can do that, or just lay on your back and feel a stretch in the outside of your right leg. But man, do you hear? Do you hear the way the father is eager for his son's return? He's not mad at his son for going and spending all of his money, for disrespecting him by even asking for his money before his father died. He doesn't care about those things. He sees his son and he runs and he hugs him. His father has compassion on him and he rejoices because his son who was dead has returned to life. And that's the way that our Father sees us also. He doesn't see us in all of the mistakes that we've made, all of the ways that we've sinned against Him, against ourselves, against other people. He doesn't see this laundry list of all of the things that we need to fix before we walk into being sons and daughters. He sees us and He has compassion and He rejoices. He says, "This is my son," or "This is my daughter who is dead and is alive again." Good. So from this stretch, you're going to come to lay all the way down on your back. And the inside of your feet are going to touch each other. So you're in a laying butterfly pose again. And we did this pose last week, and I put it into our practice again because I think it's a really restorative pose, and it's also a very vulnerable pose. And I think that in some ways we build up these orphan mindsets in ourselves because we feel like it's safer. We almost feel like it's less safe or more vulnerable to go to our Father because that means that we don't get to protect ourselves, that we're not the ones in control, that we don't get to manipulate all of the pieces. We put that into the hands of somebody else. And I think that feels really scary and difficult sometimes. And so as you rest in this restorative but also vulnerable pose, think about maybe how that translates into your relationship with the Father. Things that feel vulnerable, but by giving them to the Father, that it will be better, that it will be restful or nourishing for your soul. Begin to think on those things. I'm going to read you another quote from Brendan Manning. So this quote, he's talking about Jesus calling us out of our orphanhood. It says, "His love, which called us into existence, calls us to come out of self-hatred and to step into His truth. Come to me now, Jesus says. Acknowledge and accept who I want to be for you, a Savior of boundless compassion, infinite patience, unbearable forgiveness, and love that keeps no score of wrongs. Quit projecting onto me your feelings about yourself. At this moment, your life is a bruised reed, and I will not crush it, a smoldering wick, and I will not quench it. You are in a safe place. It is safe to be. So, our last final resting pose of this practice is going to be a little different than the ones we've done before. So, we're going to take a pose called legs up a wall. So, if you have a wall, I'm going to walk you through how to move into this pose. If you don't have a wall or a table or something that you can put your legs up on, lay down on the floor. I think that it'll be just as restful for you. If you do have a wall, you're going to scoop yourself over to it so that one of your hips, it doesn't matter which one, it's flush against the wall. Then you're going to lay down onto your back, hips still against the wall. And then there's really no graceful way to do this, so you can just kind of watch mine, but you're just going to slide your legs up the wall. And you just start with your hip against it so that hopefully you can get as much against the wall as possible. But once you're in your legs up a wall pose or laying here in Shavasana, begin to relax the parts of your body that you feel the most tense in. So begin to soften your eyelids. Let your tongue fall from the roof of your mouth. Even let your legs relax and feel heavy, and let the wall support them. Let your hands sink deep into the floor, the backs of your hands. I'm going to read to you again the Father's response to his Son coming home. So, the Son, the Son set off and went to his Father. But while he was still far off, his Father saw him and was filled with compassion. He ran and put his arms around him and kissed him. Then the Son said to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. But the Father said to his slaves, quickly, bring out a robe, the best one, and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. And get the fatted calf and kill it, and let us eat and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. And they began to celebrate. Friends, if you feel like you're dead or moving towards death, if you just feel tired or restless or defeated, this is our Father's response to you as you turn towards him. He rejoices and he runs, filled with compassion towards you. So let that be true as we meditate here, and even as we begin to exit our practice and go back into our days. And as you find yourself in the next days and weeks and months, as you find yourself identifying some of those orphan-like traits, come running to your Father who is already running towards you. You don't need to hide them or feel shame over them, or feel like you have to fix them before you can walk towards Jesus. He is already running towards you. All you need to do is move toward him. Take one more deep breath here in this pose. And then as gracefully as you got into it, so gracefully, you can move yourself out of it. Thank you so much for practicing with us today in the midst of our technical difficulties and dogs. Although nothing fell today, the last two practices we've done, something has fallen off the wall at one point or another, so we're thankful for that at least. But yeah, we're just grateful that we got to practice with you again today, and are really grateful for this space that we are starting to get to have every week. Next week, I will not be able to do yoga live at 10:30, but I'm already working on a yoga video that I will publish at 10:30 next Saturday morning. So if you still want to come to the channel and do it right at 10:30 amongst some other people, the same spirit of that is there. You'll still be practicing amongst others in community and worshiping together. And then I'll be back in 2 weeks for a live practice. And so, yeah, thank you so much for being here and for enduring all of the technical things and the noise. And I'll see you back kind of next week, but definitely in 2 weeks. And with music, we'll be back next time too. So bye.